Hello and welcome. I'm Arilax, and this week we have yet another broken Mox Opal deck from Kaladesh Block. I don't know what the genesis of this deck was exactly. I remember seeing it first in some Sam Black articles about a month or so ago. It popped up a couple places on Magic Online, and then over the weekend of Grand Prix San Antonio, both Pascal Maynard finished his team finished 11-3 at that Grand Prix with Pascal playing the deck, and Michael Jacobs streamed a decent amount with the deck. So I figured, it's probably time to give it a go, see how good it is. And this deck is KrarkClan Ironworks Scrap Trawler. So KrarkClan Ironworks is a card that's I actually played this card a lot in Standard. It was a blast with Artifact lands, and it's probably the biggest reason you can't have Artifact lands in Modern, more so than Affinity or anything else. Um, so it lets you turn any artifact into 2 mana. If you have Scrap Trawler, you sack the artifact. So let's say I have a KrarkClan Ironworks, and I sack an Ichor Wellspring. I get 2 mana and draw a card, and then Scrap Trawler returns my Chromatic Star. And then I play Chromatic Star, so it costs me a mana, but then I sack it to Ironworks, so that nets me a mana, and I draw a card, and I Scrap Trawler a Mox Opal. Then I play the Mox Opal, and that nets me a mana, and then I sack it for 2 mana. And I've just made approximately a million mana and drawn some cards and just get to keep going. It's very similar to the way the Eggs deck used to work back when Second Sunrise was a card, except for you don't need Second Sunrise because this is your Second Sunrise or Faith's Reward or whatever. So to break down what's going on here, you have a bunch of mana rock / zero cost artifacts. Specifically, you want 0-drop so that at the end of your chain of Scrap Trawler returns, you get an extra couple mana. So Everflowing Chalice is better in that regard than Mindstone. Though watching some of Mike Jacobs replays, he was sideboarding this out a decent amount in some quantity, so it's shavable. You have Explosives as an interactive card that's also a 0-drop, and you can actually, because you generate colored mana through Chromatic Stars if you want, or Spheres, you can get to spots where you like Explosives for some amount, get it back with something else, Explosives for another amount, and that clears their board. So that's pretty sweet. So this mana gets you, the Chalices, the Opals, the Mindstone, gets you to a faster KrarkClan Ironworks. Good stuff. You have all your cantrips that are fueling your rebuy engine. So you have Chromatic Sphere, which is actually the worst one. And that is because, well, one is you cannot draw a card when you sacrifice it to KrarkClan Ironworks. So that's a big part of it. So you don't get to make 2 mana. You have to choose between netting 0 mana and drawing a card or making 2 mana. You don't get both. Then you have Star and Terrarion, which Terrarion gives you the card but not the mana. Star just is the best of everything. And then you have Wellspring as your 2-drop that buys the 1-drop, etc., down the chain. Ancient Stirrings, because it's probably the best legal cantrip when you can apply it, which this deck does well. Your big mana finish is Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, though it's not actually necessary to kill them because, pretty sweet thing, Hangerback Walker costs 0. So the original list of this deck played Mere Battlesphere, and the idea was that you would eventually Inventor's Fair, find the Mere Battlesphere, and then you'd cast it, and then Sanctum of Ugin would trigger, and then that would find your Emrakul. Well, if you cast Hangerback Walker, X equals 4, costs 8, so that covers the thing that triggers Sanctum of Ugin. But it's also a 0-drop for chaining through to KrarkClan Ironworks. And then something that was demonstrated on Mike Jacobs' stream that's pretty awesome is that once you have gear per Aether Grid, this card goes wild once you start going off. So you don't actually need the Emrakul to kill them. You can just Aether Grid in those spots where Aether Grid might be better because, I don't know, Stony Silence or some nonsense is going on. And the idea is that you Hangerback Walker, you can do it for a large amount. You sack it, and then you make a bunch of Thopters, and you tap those to deal damage with Aether Grid, and then you sack all those. No matter how many Thopters you make with Hangerback, you're always plus 2 mana on the exchange. It's because it costs 2 mana per Thopter, and then you have the original body to sacrifice. That's pretty sweet, as long as you don't make 0. Then Trawler is kind of the key to the deck. You are trying to search for it with Inventor's Fairs and stuff. Get it back with Academy Ruins. So looking at the mana, you've got a basic for Path or Ghost Quarter. Grows. I know Mike Jacob was experimenting with Spire of Industry, which is interesting. Darksteel Citadels to sack the Ironworks to get going. Inventor's Fair to find your pieces. Sanctum of Ugin, you often want to go off with the ability to draw into this card and then play it so you can then Hangerback Walker. So if you don't already have one, that's kind of nice. slash important. And then a Tendo Ice Bridge. Um, Interestingly, this is actually better than Aether Hub, I've been told. So if you play multiple hubs, hub could in theory be better because if your first hub dies without you spending the energy, you can spend energy on the second. But this card, Aether Hub is an enter the battlefield trigger on it. So if your opponent has Ghost Quarter and wants to deny you colored mana, they can put the trigger on the stack and then Ghost Quarter your hub. And then, I mean, you can get a forest, but you can't necessarily get, I don't know, a red mana or something. Whereas Tendo Iceberg just has the counter up front, so there's no ability to respond there. Um, yeah, super weird, super narrow. Uh, Not likely to come up, but might. And then just Taiga with upside actually, because you're killing your opponent from any amount of life in this deck. Um, Barch, right? You might even be. I don't actually know if you can kill through True Infinite. I think you would need a second Emrakul or a way to loop your Emrakul to do that. Yeah, you have no way to put the Emrakul in the graveyard, so you can't do that. But the upside is you kill Death Shadows with this card, so you can just start giving your opponent life. Moving to the sideboard, we've got Answers to Stony Talents, because you cannot beat that card. We've got Random Interaction, so you've got Defense Grid against Counterspell decks, Ensnaring Bridge against creature decks, and then Neil Spellbomb against graveyards. All pretty straightforward. Then alternate win cons. Aether Grid, again, dodges Stony Talents, but also just KOs some decks like Infect. It's just generically been awesome in most artifact decks since the start of the format. Then we have Wormcoil as just the big slam a thing, hope I win card. Not a lot to that one. It's because you're generating so much colorless mana, it's just significantly easier to cast than anything else. So yeah, this is the KCI deck. It'll get interesting. It does dirtle really hard, so I might have to go into turbo mode a few times. But generally, you'll just see a lot of the same thing of I'll sack Mox Opal, I'll sack this, I'll get back Mox Opal, play it, sack it, and so on and so forth. And eventually, you've drawn 40 cards and then they die. So uh, hopefully we get to showcase doing some cool stuff because the deck looks pretty awesome and feels like it's close to something really insane.